If you ever build a tech company, that's the question. What scales? How do you scale? My personal experience is you scale by doing everything else that doesn't scale first.
From a lot of people's perspective, mentally, people sort of avoid something because they're like, that's already hit it big. I missed that one. Even in those scenarios, if you're smart and you know what to look for, there are often still opportunities despite seeming, like you said, obvious.
In tech, it was obvious what was going to be great before it was obvious to the mainstream. It's really hard to be paid to do a job that seems obvious. Everybody's job in most professions is to create value. You still make a lot of good money, even when it's obvious. I mean, look, Facebook and Google, how long have they been public? Was it obvious 10 years ago? Was it obvious 20 years ago when Amazon went public? So I think obvious is like underrated.
If you were 22 years old and you had just graduated or decided you wanted to get serious, what are you following? What are you getting after? What would you tell your kid?
I think this has been a mega trend over the last half a century, but agency or autonomy or self-startedness has become more and more important. I think technology is an amplifier. And the more you are amplified, like the more you are autonomous and can sort of leverage the amplification, the more that you get this magnifying benefit. There's just so much you can learn to the point where you don't even need college. You don't even need school. If you just are obsessed with learning, then you can learn. You just want to be a sponge and you want to put yourself out there.
In 1899, the head of the United States Patent Office famously said, do we really need this? Because everything's already been invented. It's funny looking back, but I actually think it's a very common mindset, myself included. We tend to think that all of the great inventions or all of the great disruptions have already happened. My guest today, Ben Miller, is reinventing an industry that is as old as dirt, real estate. He's using technology in ways that just a few years ago seemed almost sci-fi. Ben's outlook, his wisdom, and his vision for the future are fascinating. We have a great conversation. I think you guys are going to enjoy it. Boundary Breakers is brought to you by Carter and Clark. Well, Ben, I very much appreciate you taking an hour out of your afternoon to do this. And I mean that sincerely. So thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's going to be fun. It's going to be fun. So I'm interested, just a little bit of your background, sort of where did you grow up and maybe a little bit of your early or your late education, so we get to know about you a little bit.
Yeah, so I grew up in Washington, D.C., which is unusual for people who still here. Most people leave D.C. It's a transient city. People come in and out with every administration. So I have an interesting view on politics, having sort of been in and around people in government for my whole life. And then my father was a real estate developer, and he's done all sorts of built lots of different kinds of real estate. And so that's how I got interested in real estate. And then I ended up doing something in real estate very different than him. But it gave me a perspective that most people don't have.
Gotcha. Well, I got to ask, you said you had an interesting perspective in politics, being a sort of a DC native. Could you share that? Give us your thoughts there.
Yeah. So, when you grow up in DC, you'll play with kids and their parents will be a senator or a national security advisor or like the head of the CIA, right?
Yeah.
And you'll know them as like a parent. And if you're a kid, and you look at the people's parents, right? Mostly they're pretty lame.
Yeah, for sure. Especially as a kid.
As a kid, right? Like, this person's so boring and lame.
A boomer. Yeah.
So, I think that I started by seeing behind the curtain, and now like I never believe any of the bread and circus of politics, because I just seen how unimpressive. I remember. I don't know if I'm going to name names and hopefully it doesn't matter, but there was a senator named Chuck Robb. He was senator of Virginia. His wife actually was Lyndon Johnson's daughter. And I remember I was a kid. I was like probably 13 or something, and like he couldn't make any decision on his own. It was crazy. His wife made every decision. I just watched him like I just watched and I was like, what is going on here? This guy, because this can't seem to like make a single decision. We're talking about like, I'm not like that policy stuff. I'm just like normal things like,
Yeah.
how do I like, oh, you should take a taxi. How do I call a taxi? Like what, like just things that I was like, what this person doesn't seem to be like, he's like, this is a fancy, I mean, this is like blue blood fancy. And I was just happened to be in the room and I was watching it. So anyways, you sort of get lots of little vignettes of that. And like another story, this is a secondhand story, but one of my friends like somehow met Bono from U2.
Yeah.
And when he was like with his daughter was like a teenager, and the daughter just didn't give a shit. She treated him like he's an idiot. and she was just like, no matter who you are.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. It's so far. I mean, it's really interesting that you say that. Talk about like a look behind the curtain, and if you're not in DC, you just see these people on the television, and you imagine that they're larger than life, and they have all this power. That is in large part what I'm trying to do with this podcast. The years ago, I mean, I've run into just happenstance people that in the world of business, people are heroes, right? These are like entrepreneurial heroes, built unicorns, and all this blah blah. Well, they're just normal people. They put their pants on one leg at a time, and so the chance I think it's inspiring because it allows, everybody thinks they're just normal, and the other people are the heroes, right? So it allows people to get rid of the imposter syndrome and know that, I believe that anybody can do it, whatever, if you put your mind to it. So I love that. I love that. So what type of real estate development did your father do? Was it in DC, the DC area?
Yeah, in DC and different. I mean, he did all different kinds of stuff. Like, if you're a real estate person, real estate developers are cut from a certain kind of cloth.
Oh yeah,
they're usually abnormal people. Like I mean, I think Donald Trump, and like, there's a lot about him that's actually similar to most real estate developers.
yeah.
Big vision, just, maybe I won't go too far off the edge here, but the point is that
Tolerance for risk, maybe.
I don't know. It's hard I'm trying not to be pejorative here, but
Yeah,
real estate developers are wild people.
gotcha.
And it's really tough, and bigger stuff you build, the more crazy it gets, and so complicated and drawn out. It takes years to build something, and so I watched him, through the 80s and the 90s, and real estate's gone. If you're in real estate long enough, there's cycles, big cycles, go up and down, and in 1992, the whole real estate industry basically was bankrupt.
Yeah.
And so I saw that, and then, and at my youngest ages, I remember being in like the shovel of bulldozers and stuff, and so I've always sort of been in and around and interested in real estate, and but development is like torture.
Gotcha.
Real estate development is just sadomasochism.
Yeah, lots of fortunes won and lost over the course of one lifetime, right? Typically.
Yeah. There's a saying in tech where you invest in 100 deals, 99 go to zero and one goes to billions, a unicorn.
Yeah.
And in real estate, you invest in 100 deals and 99 make money and one bankrupts you.
I like that. Well, but it's interesting the way that you describe it, because you don't describe it as something that is necessarily in a positive light that you were necessarily attracted to. Like, I want to do that, but maybe I'm reading too much into it. It's the real estate
not
part.
At all.
Yeah, the development part was.
I was like, I'm not doing this. This does not look fun.
Yeah, but real estate in general attracted you, just not the development part, right?
Well, I mean, ultimately, like, I ended up combining tech and real estate, and that was a combination of two things that like became interesting to me. And I've done a lot of real estate. I mean, a lot of kinds of real estate, and I like real estate too. But it's the kind of projects he did: urban infill, large mixed use, complicated.
Oh, I gotcha.
Those deals which take like 7 to 10 years.
Gotcha. Trying to get zoning and
like, I mean, I worked on one with way back when, and like, you're in the middle of the project and 9/11 happens, and all sorts of stuff happening to you. It's just like, it's time, how long it takes to build things in real estate. It's just mind-blowing.
Yeah. Yeah. For sure. Fair enough. Fair enough. Well, okay. Well, so take us back to before Fundrise, and first of all, I guess, did you know you wanted to be an entrepreneur? Were you looking for ideas, or was this more of something that sort of you stumbled upon, and then sort of walk us through the problem that you were looking to solve?
No. I think I do have a little bit of an entrepreneurial um, personality. And so I was working in real estate 2000, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And that was like, as I said, there's ups and downs in real estate. And you saw this sort of up and then a down. I mean, and the up was crazy.
Yeah.
It's hard for people to like appreciate how crazy it was. Like, but like in Washington, this is going to seem crazy to people who know anything about real estate, but like in Washington, D.C., the price of a condo had been the same per square foot for like 20 years. From like the 80s all the way to 2000, it was always $100 a square foot for a condo. And then it just sort of, the real estate market took off, and people would like build a condo, and the customer would tie up the condo contract, and then when the condo delivered, flip it for like $50,000. And the condo construction, the value of a property went from $100 a square foot to $200 a square foot to $300 a square foot to $400 a square foot to $500 a square foot. And it just became like, I mean, that is just like a crazy amount of growth for real estate. And so everybody started building condos, everybody started building housing, and then obviously it blew up. And then I watched it blow up, and I was, I was in the room, but like we had large projects with large capital partners. Our largest capital partner was originally called GMAC Commercial, which is General Motors Acceptance Corporation. They had a big capital arm because under the sort of previous GM idea of like, how do you make money? You make money in finance, not actually in cars.
Yeah. Like GE Capital, for example.
Like GE Capital, like GM did the same thing. It's actually also funny, people know this about airlines. Airlines make all their money on rewards. They don't make any money on flying airplanes. And so they were our capital partner, they were our lender and our equity. I think they had something like $500 billion in assets. And in 2008, they went bankrupt. They went bankrupt because they'd been bought by Goldman Sachs and a couple other hedge funds, and Square Mile, I think. And so our biggest capital partner like went bankrupt, and then like everywhere I looked, the people who were supposed to be the sophisticated players, the big money, were like both the most distressed, and like turned out to have made the worst decisions. Right? Like, I mean, it's hard. You're old enough to remember this, but like the loss of confidence in the financial system at that time was like, I mean, it's part and parcel of what's happened to the nation, as we slowly but surely lost confidence in the experts. And it was, we lost confidence in the government when they invaded Iraq, and it turned out to be disastrous. So we lost confidence in foreign policy experts and financial experts, and then later like healthcare experts. We just lost confidence in everybody who was establishment over the course of that kind of era. And so I was part of that movement, and I came out of that experience being like, God, there's got to be a different way to do this. Like this institutional money, raising money from institutions, it's so like artificial, and so that's when I was just sitting there thinking about, well, is there another way to do this? And I was buying some properties in an up and coming neighborhood in Washington, D.C. And back in that era, 2011, 12, 13, there was this rise of the millennial coming of age. They're moving into cities. They're moving into up and coming neighborhoods. They were sort of revitalizing neighborhoods that had been, derelict. So this happened in Bushwick and parts of Brooklyn and parts of LA Arts District, and happened everywhere. Cleveland, Washington, D.C., Miami's art districts. I mean, everywhere. And that was the real estate way to make money in real estate was to buy in those neighborhoods and renovate buildings or build new buildings and serve that new kind of customer. Um, and I was doing that on my own at that point with my brother, and and I was buying this property, and I went to go raise the money from like institutional investors who were, mostly in the suburbs back then. It was like older, wealthy people lived in the suburbs back then,
Okay.
and that's where the money was. And the money was just like, I never heard of that neighborhood. Isn't that dangerous? And they're like, no, this is where all the growth is. This is the future.
Yeah.
And everybody I knew, all the people who lived in the neighborhood who were my age, were like, wow, that's incredible. You're buying that. It was a city block. You're buying that, and we bought it for like $4 million. It was like amazing. And so I was just like, there's this crazy disconnect between the people and the money.
Hmm.
And then I was like, is there a way to just like go directly to the people instead? And that's when I came up with the concept of Fundrise, which was like, I was walking my dog and I was like, why don't I just go directly to the people?
I love it.
And we did.
I love it. So why hadn't this is going to sound like such an awful question, but what why hasn't the avenue been sort of exploited before? Were there regulatory hurdles, or what was the?
Yeah, now it seems obvious. At the time, it was people thought it was crazy. So you have to go back to that era. So this is 2011 and 10 when I'm like coming up with this. And back then, the iPhone, it was before Uber. There were no apps of consequence. Web 1.0 is what they'd call it. So before there was like kind of this this when interactive web started showing up, and the regulations were non-existent. Like the idea of doing this was like there wasn't like any regulatory framework. And part of I had to create like the tech side of the team. We created the tech part of it. We created the real estate part of it. But then we had to go, and I literally went to the SEC, met with them, and said, we want to do this. Yeah, I went to 11 law firms.
Oh,
After
wow.
my 11 law firms, and then probably the most famous, I went to this like the fancy Wall Street law firm at the top of the Condé Nast building, which is like, so this is like the top, maybe number 2 law firm in the world, arguably. And I asked him I said, here's what I want to do. I want to democratize investing into real estate and open it up and change, I think Wall Street's broken and all this stuff. And they looked at me and they said, why would you bother with a little guy?
Wow.
And so that's what people thought. That's what people thought. So it took a lot of different expertise, took securities law and regulatory work and tech work and real estate work. And so no one had ever done it. And the first time we did it, we were the first. And then, over the course of 5-6 years, it went from crazy to novel to obvious.
That's cool. That's actually really cool. And so for the audience, I don't know if it is completely apparent on his face, but most people, when they think Main Street, when they think about investing, maybe potentially like an E-Trade account or something like that, that is the opportunity to invest in equities, right? So to own part of a very small sliver of a corporation, a company, publicly traded company. And what you created, what you were the first to do, is the opportunity. You provided the opportunity for Main Street individuals to lend out their capital in exchange for a return on a portion of that loan. Is that a fair characterization?
Well, the first deal they ended up owning a piece of a building.
Oh, wow.
In a neighborhood. So they were like, for $100, they owned whatever percent it was, a percent of a property that we redeveloped. And we had 325 investors invest $325,000 approximately. And so we started by letting people, we used to call it build your city, like own and build the city you want to have. we started there, we did that, but it was really not scalable. It was really challenging. And we grew. Then we started like lending, and then we started funds, and we evolved a lot over the years and
Sure.
scaled, and then changed, added asset classes, et cetera, et cetera. But no, and originally it was like it was about like local. I mean, not to get too fancy, but communitarian almost, like the idea
Yeah.
of communities owning and building um, their own like neighborhoods.
Yeah. I like that. And I also, by the way, I remember the era well with the gentrification. Where I'm in Atlanta, so there were several areas in Atlanta, like
Yeah,
Old Fourth
Atlanta
Ward.
changed
Yeah,
radically.
yeah, and so that's interesting. I mean, especially thinking about it like that, right? Like investing in sort of the up and coming areas. And so we'll talk us through that. So that part, having all of these as sort of owner partners wasn't scalable. So how did you? What was scalable on
Well,
that front?
I mean, this is if you ever build a tech company, um, that's the question.
Yeah.
What scales? How do you scale? And like my personal experience is you scale by doing everything else that doesn't scale first,
Yeah, yeah,
and then you figure out what scales last. But um, I mean, this is I mean, I don't know, we have enough time to go through the full arc of it, but to sort of summarize, we started by democratizing investing into a single property of that we were the owner developer of, that I like was personally the sponsor, and we developed. And then we started to become a platform where we'd lend to real estate companies, like a mezzanine debt, or like some kind of lending to other real estate companies who were developing in emerging neighborhoods. And then we said, oh, actually, we want to do more of a portfolio structure, because the problem is that a single deal is very risky, and most people don't really like know how to pick which real estate deal to pick, and so we ended up doing a fund structure. And then we went and did like another, like a mutual fund structure. And then we got, the bigger we got, the more we sort of consume the value chain, if you will, like where we did more and more of the work in order to drive more and more of the value back to the investor. So by the end, which is the last few years, like we have the tech platform where people invest. We have the fund management, which are these large, like mutual fund structures, and then we have a real estate operating platform that does all the construction and property management and operations, and all of that is on a single like infrastructure, technology infrastructure, data backbone, so that we can drive better outcomes, and build like what I think is the future of real estate, but the future of every industry is like to replace processes and people with software.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I love that. That's where I want to go next. I have 5 kids, right? And you you answered my question with sort of like, well, isn't that the sort of what everybody is after? How do you scale? You do it by finding everything that doesn't scale. I mean, often my kids ask, how am I supposed to know what I want to do when I grow up? And I say, I have no idea, but I can tell you what I did, which was figure out everything you don't want to do, and then until you finally find what you do. But the I'd love to get your thoughts and input on what you see as uh, the future of real estate, and sort of particularly at sort of like the institution. Well, that sounds with negative connotation, but at this, maybe at this level of scale, right? So whether it's an entity that has a couple thousand or 10,000 build to rent units, or whether it's a large, the public home builders, right? The D.R. Horton and Pulte's of the world. What? I mean, I think everyone's guessing a little bit with artificial intelligence and what it will replace. I think it's becoming a little bit more clear. But with real estate in particular, what are your thoughts on what it was going to change? How about that?
Yeah. So let me just give a background of how I come to this
Yeah,
view,
please,
because
please.
it helps like give people understanding of what I'm going to say. So, um, once we got fairly scaled, where we had over 200 employees, and we have had $3 billion equity under management, $6-7 billion real estate. We had like 20,000 residential units, built for rent. We have 4 million square feet of industrial. We really scaled. Um, we started to look at sort of like, well, where's growth, where's change, where's excitement, and we launched a venture fund. So we have a venture fund that, just like real estate, where it's a fund, anyone can invest in it. It's a $10 minimum, and our venture fund went out and invested in invested in the top tech companies in the world. And that was really, we did that because we were building software for our business and for real estate, this is what I'm building up to. And we were learning a lot about what was instrumental. What are the inputs to build software, AI for real estate. And then every time we'd find an input, we would then go invest in it in our venture fund. So, and I can say all these things, and most people won't know. Most people in real estate don't know anything about, like, so they're like DBT Labs and Databricks and High Touch, and we tried to invest in Fivetran, and then ultimately invested in OpenAI and Anthropic, but also Service Titan and a bunch of other companies that like were I think we saw as essentially key building blocks to build what will become the future of real estate. And so we're at this intersection of real estate and tech. And then we when we vertically integrated and we were owning our own properties, like that we managed, that we were managing the properties that we own. Before, we used to use joint venture partners. And the way that would work is that joint venture partner would send us a report once a month, spreadsheet with budget, financials, rent rolls, things like that. But when we got into the property directly as an owner, we realized that every property, there's a database. In the database is millions of transactions, but the real estate company doesn't know anything about databases. And so we started to suck all the data out of the databases of all the properties. And then we started to do data engineering around it, in data science, and all sorts of data transformations and all sorts of stuff that most real estate companies don't know that much about. And as we built more and more infrastructure for our own operations, this is why we invested in DBT. For example, you can't do data transformation without DBT. Most people don't know what DBT is, but it's funny when I'm in tech communities, when I say, big real estate names built multi-billion, they never heard of them either. So people don't know anybody outside their sector. So it's like, it's because it doesn't matter to them. But I think it's going to matter to them. And we've been building our own AI application layer that has taught me a lot about AI, and it's going to eat jobs. It's going to eat jobs, like, for sure. And people today are AI skeptics because they haven't seen it yet. But I guarantee you that your kids, probably your and my kids, will never use an Excel spreadsheet.
Agreed. Now you're getting me excited. I love it. So this isn't about me. This is about you. But my company, we're at the intersection of high volume trade contractors and construction, put it that way. Right. So we're in the process of building an AI platform to speed up the production home building. It could be a very boring industry, but not when you layer on interesting technology. Anyway, I couldn't agree more. Every other day, I continue to be blown away and start peeling back the onion about what this is going to look like. And there's no question at all. I mean, what OpenAI just rolled out with the it's basically on-demand software writing. I mean, they're not quite there yet, but the ability to, like you said, you're never going to use an Excel spreadsheet. You can almost sort of have whatever whatever application. Well, I don't want to go down this, but this is about you. I love it. I love what you're talking, and I love the path that you took. So, and I've got a million thoughts going through my head because one of the other folks I had on here was an AI consultant expert who took the largest apartment owners association in Manhattan and got this similar type data, but it was more for preventative maintenance, and to the point where they could predict when the doorbell was going to go out on unit 508 because of the so you've been after this before it was cool, it sounds like, and are you guys what you're building is going to leverage the insane amount of data that you guys have available from all different angles?
Yeah. We built a database over the last 4 years. And there's been a lot of data engineering to make that possible. And the goal we've gone down is to build a real estate analyst, an AI analyst. So much of real estate work is analysis. And so can you replace that analysis with an AI? And the answer is yes. Not completely, but like to a large extent. And so that's what we've been building. That's the kind of like so much of our work, investment analysis and operations analysis, asset management, it's different kinds of analysis. And that's what we knew a lot about from a real estate point of view, and then knew a lot about how would AI and how would sort of a data product to do that work. So that's what we've been building. But it's, as you said, whatever you're building, there's so many different jobs to be done. And each one of those jobs can be at the minimum AI assisted, which is like, it means like, half the work, let's say approximately half the work is done by AI, which means that you need less people, and people who are there are more productive and smarter. And so, it's funny whenever I talk to real estate people, anybody, they're like, I don't know what you mean. And I'm like, well, if you're old, like, both of us are old enough to be like, remember before there was the internet,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah,
Did you use the internet every day?
Yeah. It's a really great point. It's a great point.
But like the internet surprised the real estate industry, shocked them. Like, how much did e-commerce affect real estate?
Oh yeah, for sure. Gosh.
Crushed the retail industry. How about work from home? Or how about industrial? How about office?
Yeah. Wow.
Right. But yet the real estate industry is like, well, I don't really see how this is going to affect me. Like, show me exactly what it's going to do. I'm like, okay, but by the time you see how obvious it is, your real estate's either lost half its value because you own the wrong thing, or maybe you're lucky and it made a lot of value, but it's going to have massive effects on you. The last 20 years, if tech hasn't been the biggest effect on real estate, it's been the second biggest effect. Maybe the biggest effect's interest rates, but
Yeah.
I mean, it's up there as one of the most important things. And real estate people are obsessed with interest rates, obsessed with the Fed, obsessed with macro demographics. Maybe they're thinking about like, supply and demand of supply of new homes and all that stuff. And so they're obsessed with this thing, and tech is at least as important, and they just don't know anything about it. Or they know so little.
I couldn't agree more. What I mean, it seems to me that, look, I mean, I don't want to pretend like I know about your space, right? I don't, but it seems to me that given the amount of data that's out there and how incredibly well artificial intelligence can make predictions, it seems to me like you would be able to feed as much data as you possibly could, and that it would almost be able to pick certain properties that in terms of what are the best investment, like based on all the available data, this zip code or this block or this particular, given the type of construction, that's the one you want to buy because of, more information than either one of us could ever, put together in our own head. Is that a sophomoric thought, or do you feel like your model or other models will be able to do this very simply in the future?
Yes, with a qualifier. So that's what we built. It's called realai.com.
It's available to the public?
It's sort of in like private stealth mode, but you can go to realai.com and you can see it and you can start to use it. Um, but
Sweet.
it's not going to be better than the best real estate person. Like I know really good real estate people who literally they know their neighborhood, every house, every block, every neighbor, every city council member. They know that area better than anybody. And that data is not available. It's not that data is not like in the internet, right? And so I don't think it's going to be better than the best real estate person. But that 22-year-old person comes out of college and gets a job and does your analysis, it's going to be better than them for sure.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so if you're talking about like, okay, I'm going to hire 5 analysts this year or 1 analyst, or, you're only going to hire half as many, and then you're going to be able to get better work from the 22-year-old to 24-year-old. So there's like, that's where it is today. And I think it will get to a point within the next couple of years where it's probably as good as a 30-year-old. But I don't know if it'll ever get, or like anytime soon, ever get as good as like somebody who's 20 years in. Like there's a lot of knowledge that's not like the AI is not trained on, you can't get. So I think I do think it's a compliment to the best real estate people, just like a computer was a compliment to the best real estate people, just like the internet is a compliment to the best real estate people, is a compliment. It's not going to replace people who are the best, but it's definitely going to replace people who are not the best.
Got it. Got it. Got it. I think that's very insightful. Very well put too. So you earlier you mentioned it, with the venture fund, some of the companies you guys were investing in. You mentioned Service Titan, and I'm curious what. Tell me about that and your experience with. I come from the world of home services and more on the residential side. But how did you guys get turned on to them, and what do you see there?
Yeah, I mean, we invested in them a few years ago before they went public. Um, it's so fun being across asset classes, I invest across different real estate. I invest across different parts of the country, get to invest in different kinds of parts of the capital stack, equity, debt, aspect securities. And I get to invest across different like, sectors like tech and these these things that are driving growth are always across all these things. You don't see it because you don't exist there, but like data centers. Obviously, data centers plays in everything I just said. We're in OpenAI, we're in data centers, you're in the hardware, you're in the real estate, you're in the lending, you're in the equity, you're in the like there aspect securities, there's public companies, there's so many different ways to play it. They're all connected. I mean, and they're all being driven by the same underlying trend too, and different places in the sort of world that you can invest in are like there's depends on like where we are in the cycle and all. So anyways, it's like and it's just so funny seeing the whole more of the picture than when I used to be just like a real estate person. And so Surface Titan is similar. And in techs is you want to be in the top 10, 20, 30, 50 companies. That's all you want to be in real estate. There's 100 million properties, 200 million properties. There's ways to create value in all of them. It all matters the price you pay, what's happening in the neighborhood. But in tech, it's like the power law. So it's like the top 0.001% will get 80% of the value in growth. And so it's like opposite. In real estate, you want to pick the right building. In tech, you already know what the right thing is. You just have to get into them. And so it's like, and eventually people always give me grief about this because they're like, oh, it's not that easy. And I'm like, yeah, I mean, it's, the earlier you pick it, you can be in the Uber, OpenAI before it's obvious. You obviously make more money, but it's still the same thing. You still want to be in that, like those few companies. And so, we're in a lot of those few companies and some of them, well, I mean, sometimes when we invested in them, it was obvious as hell. and sometimes it wasn't as obvious, but I almost make the same. You still make a lot of good money, even when it's obvious. I mean, look, Facebook and Google. How long have they been public?
Yeah.
And it was obvious. Was it obvious 10 years ago? Was it obvious 20 years ago when Amazon went public? Nevertheless, so I think obvious is like underrated.
Yeah, that's interesting. It's just, there's something that happens, I think, where from a lot of people's perspective, mentally, people sort of avoid something because they're like, oh, that's already hit it big, right? Like I missed that one. And it sounds like what you're saying is sometimes that can't be the case. Sometimes that happens, but even in those scenarios, if you're smart and you know what to look for, there are often still opportunities despite uh, it seeming, like you said, obvious.
Yeah, let me parse that. I think I have three
Please.
observations about it. One is that it's obvious to you. You may not be like mainstream. It may be obvious to people who are AI engineers before it's obvious to my mom, right?
Yeah.
And so
Gotcha.
depending on who you are, it's something. I mean, what's cool, which used to be that fashion always started in Paris, and by the time people were wearing it in Columbus, something, it's been out of fashion in Paris for a long time. So,
Good
so
point.
like, so that's like, so a lot of tech companies, like a lot of tech, and this is also true with real estate, it's true with everything, I'm sure, but in tech, it was obvious what was going to be great before it was obvious to the mainstream. Their second is that there are structural. I mean, most people can't invest in private companies. They can't get access to them. You have to have relationships. So there's also a part of it there. And then I think that this is very true with real estate, and it's true with anybody who's paid to do a job. It's really hard to be paid to do a job that seems obvious. Like you're not paid to do something that somebody, like, literally you could go buy the top 7 Magnificent Seven yourself. And so if a hedge fund says all I do is buy Mag 7,
Oh,
you
I see.
probably aren't going to pick them, but actually that's like,
I
were
got you.
you actually going to buy the top 7 tech companies? No, but and were you a real estate person, your job is to add alpha.
Okay.
So everybody's job in most professions is to create value, to add alpha. And so they believe that, and they literally believe they're adding alpha. Like, and I'm like, most people aren't, right?
Yeah.
They're not I mean, this is what the whole passive investing movement's about, is that, and this is very true with real estate, you're mostly buying beta, not alpha, which we can get into what that is. But anyway, so I just think that like obvious is way underrated.
I think I think that's brilliant. Yeah, give me the difference. I was with you about adding alpha, but you lost me with most of the time you're buying beta.
Yeah, so beta is I mean, there's a technical term, and sort of like, but the layman's sense of it is that like you're just buying the cycle.
Okay.
Right? So when you're buying real estate in 2011, like you're at the bottom of the cycle, and then real estate goes from 2011 to 2021, 10 years of just massive appreciation. Everybody who's in real estate felt like they're really smart, and they were adding all this alpha, and then creating all this value. And then the cycle ended, and the beta shifted, and it turned upside down, and everybody lost a lot of money, and values went down. And it wasn't your fault it went down, and it wasn't your fault when it went up. But that's not how people's brains work.
Yeah. Makes sense.
And so there is alpha for sure in everything in real estate, but it's like, I think it's like 80% beta, 20% alpha. Like this is my experience in 2008 financial crisis, like, or COVID. When COVID hits, I don't care what you're doing. When 2008 financial crisis hits, like, man, it's a tidal wave. Your sandcastle can be like exquisite.
Yeah. Yep. See ya. See ya. Yeah. It is. I hear you. It's also interesting. Just, I mean, you're speaking to a lot of the sort of the psychological aspects to, I don't know what you'd call it, or maybe, I mean, like the sort of investing outlook, or where the mob ends up sort of going towards. And I find it fascinating because the the second that I explain that I'm in the world of residential construction, there's this immediate like okay, yeah. So there's a stigma of the industry, which in my mind is exactly why I want to be in it, because they're 15, 20 years behind everybody else in a lot of things, and I think that's where the opportunity is. But the do you have an idea of what you know the next thing is? Or how about, let me ask it this way: if you were 22 years old and you had just graduated, or decided you wanted to get serious, what are you following? What are you getting after? What would you tell your kid?
Yeah, I mean, it's this is I think this has been a mega trend over the last half a century, but um, agency or autonomy or self-startedness has become more and more important over the last half. I'm going half century. I'm going back. If you go back just for a second, because it's easy to do extreme, go back to the 1950s. In the 1950s, you were quote a company man, and you worked for IBM, and you were rewarded for basically being conformist, and you had job safety, and it was a different world. And over every decade, um, I think technology is an amplifier, and the more you are amplified, like the more you are autonomous and can sort of leverage the amplification, the more that you get this magnifying benefit. And so, like, first there's computers, and there's internet, and then there's mobile, and then there's cloud, and then there's AI. And a lot of people just aren't. I mean, this is when you're hiring people; they're not naturally curious. They come to a lot of people I know. They go to their job. Their job's their job. They go home. They don't. They're not constantly reading about the thing and obsessed about it, and so they're not likely to get amplified by and not get the. And so that you want leverage. And so AI is, like, today the most leverage you can get. Very few people are like obsessed with learning how to, you know, prompt prompt engineer or like listening to podcasts. And there's just so much you can learn. I mean, to the point where you don't even need college. You don't even need school. As well, if you just are obsessed with learning, then you can learn. I mean, this is what's so wild. The internet has made information free. I mean, you can learn so much. You can go listen to Stanford professors teach classes on anything. Everything is available to you. And most people want it to be handed to them. Want routine. They want structure. They don't like uncertainty. And so the more you are like kind of drive to that extreme, the more the future will be yours. Um, and that people are like, but yeah, but tell me like exactly what to do. Give me the instructions. And I'm like, that is the opposite of what I'm saying, right?
Right.
You have to be like a self-starter. Um, and that's what, it doesn't really matter what area you're in. You could be science, health, real estate. You just want to be a sponge, and you
Yeah.
want to put yourself out there.
That's great. That's great advice. I mean, is it fair to say, sort of listen to yourself and what you're curious or interested in, and follow your curiosity with dogged determination until you can sort of get there? You got to
Yeah. I
you
mean,
got to get on the dance floor, right? You got to get.
going full circle. This is I was in a room probably like 10 years ago now, when I was like just starting Fundrise. And we got invited to this room in the top of Morgan Stanley's building, the top investment bankers for like all the big banks. Like, these are like the fanciest people. And they were talking about something about securitization. And I can't remember what the acronym was. It was some acronym. I just had no idea what they're talking about. So I raised my hand. I was like, what does this acronym mean? And nobody in the room knew.
You're kidding.
And that's what I'm talking about with going full circle to the, when I started in DC, like behind the curtain, you should be surprised how little's there. And how many people are actually trying to learn, asking. I always tell the people, ask the second question. Somebody tells you something, well, why? They give you an answer. Ask why again. Ask why 5 times. Like, get to ground. And most people just don't. They take, they take things for granted. Somebody says something that looks like they have authority. They must know what they're talking about. Uh, very few people have any idea very few people have any idea what they're talking about. And that's like exciting if you're young, and then as the older you get, the more depressing that becomes.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. Well, so what is on your list, right? I mean, if you got an extra, 45 minutes to read, to learn, to be a sponge, what are the top one or two things that are at the top of your list that you're trying to run down at the moment?
I'm in building mode today because I'm building this real AI, and it's been so fun. So I've been there's so much to learn, that the learning is like you can go out and say okay, I think OpenAI or Anthropic put out best practices on prompting, and it's like a 50-page document. I mean, they're putting out all sorts of documentation. So I would be reading that stuff. I'd be reading, maybe even if I had a lot of juice, like a lot of um, energy, I would probably try to read some of the AI papers that are being published. You'd be surprised how accessible parts of the paper are, and how once you read enough of them, you start realizing that it's not as complicated as it seems. Um, I mean, when I was first learning about AI, a couple of years ago, I had to go back and relearn linear algebra.
Just to try to understand the neural network and
I wanted
how
to
it
know how
actually
it
works.
worked. Yeah, how did it actually work? And actually, linear algebra, at least 101, sounds so fancy, but it's actually not. It's just matrix multiplication. It's just I'm telling you, like you said, it may sound fancy right now. If you look, it's literally just multiplying two numbers together. I mean, it's not that complicated. Just that AI does it at incredible scale. I mean, just scale that my mind can't wrap in trillions of calculations. But it's so anyways, I think there's it's it's wild how few people are reading the primary research, trying to understand it, reaching out to people, asking how it works. It's just small. It's a small community of people who are genuinely trying to drive this new wave. And there's this famous, it's famous. There's a guy who works at Anthropic who literally was just curious dude reading stuff and asking questions on a public, not Reddit board, but and they just hired him.
You're kidding.
Oh, this guy's really curious.
Yeah.
And he was really smart too. But anyways,
good for them. Good for them.
It's wild. I mean, it's wild how much more open the world is to people who are really going to be self-starters, curious, hardworking.
And do you think we could wrap up here in just 1 second? One more follow up to that. Do you think that is an inherent trait that we are either sort of born with or born without, or is it a muscle that we all have that you can strengthen?
That's such a good question, because I feel like I've had this debate for decades with people. So I think it's a genetic epiphenomenal skill. So it comes out of your genes. It's not 0 or 1. It's like height. Some people are tall, some people are short, but nobody's not tall. 0, right? There's you have a spectrum of intelligence, and so you have these genetic capabilities. Obviously, some people are much more athletic or good at music. And so I think this is a genetic phenomenon, but it's, just like athletics, you're not born an NBA star.
Yeah.
You have to put a lot of work into it. And so it's a combination of the two, and you can still be good at basketball and never be in the NBA, and that's still valuable. So you can, but it's like, and then, some people are like, don't have a proclivity for it. And it's
Right.
probably not the thing for you to put your energy into. You want to put your energy into the things you have proclivity to, like you're naturally good at this thing, now become the best at it.
Yeah. Yeah. That's great. Such a great answer, because the answer is both. Is it a lot of people? You can be born with a whole lot of natural talent, but it still must be work and uh, continually. Like you can't just sort of go. Maybe some people can maybe go on sort of natural talent alone, but it's the Wes Welkers of the world that never ever ever stop chasing their dream, even though they might not have the largest intellectual curiosity muscle. But I also have had that debate a lot, and I've had people tell me that look, you either got it or you don't, right? So if you don't, you know, enjoy sort of the being one of the sheep. If you do, go get it. And I disagree with that.
Yeah. But at the same time, if you're 5'1", like
Right.
you're not going to be in the NBA.
Fair enough. Fair enough. But like you said, it doesn't mean you can never be good at
You can do
relatively
something
good at
else.
basketball.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You can do something else, but like, so there is definitely a genetic component.
Sure.
When people try to say it's like growth mentality, I'm like, yeah, but like, within a context of genetic, whatever genetic attributes are you born with. So yeah, it's both, but it's not. It's. I mean, anyways, we don't have to belabor it.
No, I hear you. I know. I think you made the point well, and I probably just sort of made it unclear with my commentary there. But well, I could ask you 1,000 more questions. I think you're really interesting, and have a really clear viewpoint that I agree with. Is there anything that you were hoping that we would touch on that we didn't get a chance to?
I mean, I think as I said before we got on the air, I can go and go and go.
Yeah.
So like the thing that I'm just going to make one more kind of observation that I've been struggling with. I've made this mistake multiple times, and it's just such a strong takeaway I have is that there's these big trends happening in the world, like, and they come along. I mean, AI is one, COVID was another, there's globalization, and these big trends, like, man, they are just so powerful, and they just like, and it's hard to pay attention to them because they don't matter day to day, but eventually, like what's happening with U.S. fiscal deficits, like these things will matter. And so it's like, and it sucks because you can do everything right and have those things just absolutely kill you, right? They're just, they're just, they're the tidal wave. And I wish I had a good answer for how you actually like deal with them other than pay attention to them and think about them and try to anticipate them. But it's been the biggest like lesson for me, and I learned it in 2008, and god darn it, when interest rates went to 5%, like why didn't I see that coming? Why didn't I see inflation? Our rents and our property values we owned 2021 went up like 40%, right? Like that.
Yeah.
Well, why didn't I see like for every action there's an equal and opposite reaction? Boy, is that true in the world. And I just, I missed it. I mean, I not I didn't totally miss it, but I didn't miss it. I didn't hit it as much as I felt like I should have. So I don't know I don't know what the lesson is for that, but I just feel like it's like you have to be really good at the micro and really good at the macro to be really good at life. And and if you're just good at one or the other, like, it's just you're always going to be limited.
Yeah. 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 I see what you're saying. I'm following you there. I mean, it's almost like you got to constantly be looking at through different sort of size apertures at the world, right? I mean, and that you're not gonna. I think I get it, that you're not ever really going to beat the tidal wave, right? But if you're looking too narrow through too narrow of an aperture,
That's the
maybe.
problem with being focused too much on alpha, because I think that
I see.
it makes you focus on the things you can control,
Yeah. Yeah.
and you and then that's that's the mistake. Because yeah, okay, great, you can control these little things that you drive alpha on, but the things you can't control end up being more important.
Gotcha. And it's to your earlier point, where people that think that they are delivering alpha value really are just sort of riding the wave.
Well,
Of the
they're delivering
background.
alpha, but like, and it's part of their identity, their ego, that they're being paid for that. But that's actually like, I mean, if US goes bankrupt, if AI becomes like God machine, if AI blows up, those things are going to be so much more consequential to the thing you're working on than the actual like things you could actually control.
Right.
And so people don't like to focus on the things they don't control. It makes them anxious, and they don't like ambiguity.
Yeah.
And so they and me, I mean, will you sort of neglect it for the day-to-day, like, dopamine hits.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I know there's a lesson in that, but I don't have it as cogent, like as like distilled as I wish I did.
Yeah.
It's really been like probably the struggle of the last 20 years for me.
No, I appreciate you articulating it, and I think it makes sense to me, and it's making me think too, right? I mean, I think it's a wise take on sort of big picture, what to look out for. Do you have children?
Yeah.
So is that or how old are they? Just
8, 10, 12.
okay. So I've got 12, 10, 8, 5, and 4. 6 and 4. 6 and 4. Sorry. So
Congratulations.
Thanks. Add 2 oopses to your crew. That's what I'm living in.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
Tie it back to things, COVID and things like that. Next thing you know, you got babies everywhere. But well, Ben, I could talk for. We'll have to edit that out probably. But I will. I could talk to you for another 2 hours. I really appreciate you indulging me in this conversation, and I learned a lot, and I think our audience will too. So, anything you want to add?
No, it was
here?
great. It was a great conversation. I wish I had like better answers.
Oh, please. No, your answers are phenomenal, and one of the best guests I've had in a while. So my team, it'll take, I don't know, 4 or 5 days to get everything edited, and then I'm going to go back right now and film the intro. But the second that it hits the airwaves, you'll be the first to know. You or your team will be the first to know, and it'll be on all the major platforms.
Awesome. Okay. Well, thanks a lot.
Yep.
Appreciate it. I'm glad we could meet too.
Likewise. And yeah, I'll stay in touch. I'm going to go back and watch this because you've made me think a lot. I really appreciate it, man. Hey, everybody. Brandon Ansley, host of the Boundary Breakers podcast. I just wanted to take a second and say thank you so much for all of your support over the last year with the podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, please do me a favor and go hit the like button, rate the episode, depending upon your thoughts, and then leave a comment or two. We'd love to hear some feedback. Also, don't forget that there are more than 50 other podcast episodes for Boundary Breakers on Spotify, YouTube, Apple Podcasts, or any other mainstream podcasting platform. Thank you guys so much. See you the next episode.